Well, hello. I know for a fact this video is going to piss some people off. Because the opinion I've got, whilst I think it's probably the normal opinion, the wider range of things, in the Magic community I think is going to be controversial. So if you're going to unsub or stop watching my videos because we don't agree on this topic, fine, I guess. You do you. You miserable bastard. When it boils down to it, I am genuinely very, very excited about Lord of the Rings and Warhammer crossovers with Magic the Gathering. Now, I know this might come from a place with me where I like mashups. I like pop cultural crossovers. Smash Bros is probably one of my favorite video games of all time, not just as a competitive fighting game, but as a fun party game with all the references to things I love. However, I know that for many, Magic the Gathering isn't that for people. Magic the Gathering is its own separate entity, and people care about the aesthetic, the lore, the theme, the flavor. So yeah, I get why some people are pissed off. I put out a video on Thursday talking about this, as we heard news of it whilst the investors call was going on. I recorded the video, and then after I put the video out, we had an update. So this is an update to my other video with all the information that we've got currently from Wizards of the Coast about the crossover, and a little bit on that conference, that investor call as well. They have the investor presentation. Because there's other things in there that we're ignoring. We can't see the forest for the trees because the trees are chainswords, and that upsets people. So let's start by talking updated information. CEO Chris, I can't remember his surname, I didn't write it down in my notes. CEO Chris said in the Q&A at the end of the presentation that Warhammer will be coming to Magic via this crossover in 2022. In an article on the Mothership, Wizards of the Coast also confirmed that these cards can both be reskins like the Ikoria Godzilla crossovers, or completely new standalone mechanically unique cards a la The Walking Dead. The Lord of the Rings will be its own set, whilst Warhammer will be a selection of commander decks, which is interesting. All of these crossovers are part of what's called the Universe Beyond, product line, an ongoing series of products that do crossovers and will have their own hollow foil to show that they're part of this crossover thing. It's interesting that they have their own frame or hollow foil. It does a bit like pants, actually, which is interesting. But it means that on a long enough timeline, to get enough crossovers, we may have a format where we only allow crossover stuff, and that'll be the real, Super Smash Brothers of Magic, which I know some of you are in the comment section are already writing angry comments about, but the idea that there is a format where we only play Captain Picard fighting the Marshmallow Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, it brings joy to me in a very weird way. Ultimately, mechanically unique was not what I wanted. It was not what many people wanted. I have spoken at length about this, both in my last video about this on Thursday, but also the video I explained why The Walking Dead Secret Lair sucked, that we have treatments or methodology to bring other universes into Magic that doesn't potentially open cans of worms, right? We have silver bordered. We have the Ikoria Godzilla skin stuff. Of course, don't forget, with both silver border and the Ikoria Godzilla skins, we've had people be pissed off in the past about those things too, because there's always going to be someone pissed off about something. Does nobody care about the goddamn game? What about the sanctity of its visual identity? That sort of shit. So, I guess I would have preferred a silver bordered treatment, or I would have preferred mechanically not unique, as in they are the Magic cards that exist already, like Soul Ring, for example, with a nice Lord of the Rings skin. Even the One Ring could be the name of it, and you've got a little sub-bar telling you what Magic card. So we aren't getting that. So how much is it worth complaining about not getting exactly what you wanted? If I thought what it took away from Magic was truly damaging, like what it was going to do to Magic was truly damaging, what it took away was a huge part of Magic, then I think complaints are justified. So I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't like this or complains about it vocally is wrong or not valid or their opinions don't matter. Like, I've complained about a lot of things in the past, but things that I believe are damaging the game or making the experience of the average player worse. It is clear to me that we can't say this takes nothing away from Magic as it currently is. Magic the Gathering has been full of pop culture references in the past, and it's had sets that have been literal retellings of real-world stories, like Arabian Nights, drawing heavily on brain fart blank, Aladdin and shit. But those comparisons are weird because, well, Arabian Nights happened like approximately 1 million years ago, and the pop culture references in like Innistrad and Throne of Eldraine are just that, they're references. They're still framed or positioned within a canon, within a set of rules and defined visual identities. Looking at all the memorabilia in my room, they are just that, they're references. They're not a literal, like, Marge Simpson barging in and Tommy gunning down one of the main characters. So, we can't say that something isn't being taken away, which is that cohesiveness, that singular, I say singular world, it's a multiverse, right? But that cohesive whole of Magic. My argument isn't that that isn't happening. I guess my argument is that, does it matter? There are people out there who are real Vorthoses, or Vorthoses, or whatever the plural of that word is, but it means that they love the Magic story, the canon, and the characters. And I do too. Like, I may not read every novel and every story, but I love the references to old characters, the nostalgia for the card game I grew up with. I even like most of the Planeswalker characters now, and outside of like game design problems, I think War of the Spark was a really cool event, and so on and so on. So there are some people that will just generally not want Magic to be tainted or lessened by the inclusion of other properties in its game. So on one hand, sure, I get that, but what you gotta remember is this is not them saying canonically fucking the Emperor of Mankind or Space Marines exist in the Magic universe. They are not coming to rip and tear Jace to pieces and impose themselves into every storyline going on. This is part of a range of things called Universes Beyond, or whatever it's called. I hate the fact that the initials is UB, because people talk about it online. I was thinking like the Unlimited Beta or blue-black decks and stuff. Like, it's a confusing... Magic has too many letters that mean shit. That's the problem. So whilst it might take away a cohesive, like, whole, it's not damaging the core story of the game. It's still there. This is no different to random, I don't know, Star Wars comics where Spock is in it as a weird, like, Easter egg thing from, like, I don't know, one issue back in April 1978. It's no different to a Simpsons couch gag having Family Guy characters in it. It is literally that. It's pop culture crossover. It is not the merging of the two universes. This is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's Warhammer and Magic. This is just a crossover that is, outside of the game, playing the actual game, it's self-contained. You don't have to include these things in the lore or the story. They are just game pieces that can be played with. Now, again, I get that some people won't like that either for the region of cohesion and visual cohesion and stuff, but I'm seeing a weird backlash from... I'm seeing people saying they're going to essentially rule zero to the point that they will not allow people to play these new, I don't know, Space Marine commanders in their commander pods at the LGS. And I think that's just unreasonable. To those people, I do have to ask, if someone sat down at your table and their commander had been altered by an altarist to be Pickle Rick, would you refuse to play with them as well? And if your answer is jokingly yes, because Rick and Morty fans are insufferable, sure. But let's boil down to the actual point I'm making, right? People alter their cards all the time. I've got tons of altered cards in my ADH decks. I want to get my Crota Hoof altered to be a large leg of ham, because Hoof goes ham. Would you say that I'm breaking your immersion by having that? That you don't have to play with these cards necessarily. Unfortunately, they're not skins, so some mechanics will be out of bounds for you and off limits if you don't want to play with them, which is something I don't agree with, but that's the reality we're living in. Do you think that someone else playing with them damages your experience that much? Because I don't get it. And I think it's kind of toxic and fucking gatekeepery to stop people doing that. Imagine Timmy has come down to this game store and he's picked up, let's even go further, let's push it, right? We've got Lord of the Rings and Warhammer now. Let's say it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right? Timmy's picked up the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fucking deck that's come out for Universes Beyond in 2023, and he comes to his local game store. This is post-pandemic, touch wood, fingers crossed, and he sits down to play a game, and you say, no, Timmy, you can't play with Donatello, you can't play with Splinter. Who's the fucking asshole here? Now, I want to talk a bit about some of the other can of worms this thing opens up. So, Firstly, the fact that we have other copyrights coming into Magic might make reprints difficult. Basically, if their contracts aren't written up correctly, there is a possibility that they couldn't reprint Magnus Calgar after the contract expires, meaning that if Magnus Calgar becomes a legacy vintage or even Commander staple, his price will be astronomical because they can't reprint him. I'm hoping with the lawyers at Hasbro and GW they can sort something like that out, but it does scare me a little bit. Also, I talked about it in the Walking Dead video, how mechanically unique in a limited FOMO thing is horrendous because it will lead to price spikes on staples. This is not that. At the moment, in theory, it could be that these Commander decks are limited supply and only released in a small batch and that's it, and they don't print a lot of them. That would be a problem that I would hate, but I hate limited supply run stuff anyway. So that doesn't affect on it being Warhammer or Lord of the Rings or Pickle Rick. Further to that, I guess we should also touch upon the idea that perhaps I'm being biased. I quite like Warhammer, right? So am I just defending something I like? I love Warhammer and I quite like Lord of the Rings. So I did think to myself, what if something I truly fucking hate, like Doctor Who? I think Doctor Who is dog shit. Yep, that's right. I'm trying to lose subs today, but I think Doctor Who is dog shit. If the TARDIS or Doctor Who or Daleks or Cybermen showed up, honestly, in one of these sets that's like not going through standard, I think that'd be pretty cool. I know this sounds weird and you might think I'm just saying this to defend my point, but I'm not. Like, the idea that we might get pop culture mashups like that does not offend me. It does not at any point make me not appreciate Magic more. There is a problem where we would lose the core identity of Magic. If they just dropped the Gatewatch, if they dropped Dominaria, if they dropped Urza and the Phyrexians and the Eldrazi and Nicol Bolas, and all we had were crossovers, whilst the game system would facilitate that, because the game system is incredible, right? This is the thing. The game system can make all these worlds come to life in a card game. I would hate that. Because I want Magic to remain. I want to still have that core part of Magic. And people on this slippery slope bullshit saying that the creative departments are going to find it cheaper to license other properties. Do you know how much licenses can cost? Like, EA spend a fortune having football games based on FIFA and shit. So no. Even if it's cheaper, which it might be, but I'm not convinced that it is, I doubt that I'd allow them to just drop having a creative team. That's fucking absurd. It's so, like, to the extreme. But if it were to happen, I'd hate it. But I just don't think that's happening either. And then lastly, I guess, of all the worms, we talked a lot about tone, right? And visual consistency. As much as I fucking love Warhammer as a game, painting, and even the lore, it is tonally very fucking strange for Magic the Gathering. Like I said, I'm defending this. I'm excited for this. But don't forget we had, like, disallowing guns in sets. Mark Rosewater said the energy turrets of Kardesh were almost too close to being actual guns, and now we have a super gunny fucking setting coming into the Magic bubble. Now, I spoke in the last video about how it's not straight up sci-fi because it's got some fucking lasers in it. Warhammer has huge elements of fantasy to it. It is medieval fiction in space, essentially. But the tone has some very strange things going on here. Firstly, they were adverse to the guns and the violence, and Warhammer is inherently incredibly violent in its canon, the way it talks about things, the way it depicts things. I mean, the key most identifiable weapon in the game, other than perhaps the bolt gun, is the chainsword. That's not just a chainsaw. It's just a chainsaw that cuts people and people up. In addition to that, Magic took the stance that I agree with. I understood why they took it. That they didn't need to have racism in their canon, in their fiction. It didn't need to exist. There's enough racism in the real world. It doesn't need to exist in every fictional property that you have. Some people decried when Wizards said of this, saying it was woke and it was bullshit, it's not realistic. But, like, we don't come to fiction to always be fucking realistic. That's stupid. That's an absurd notion. It's a kind of bad faith argument. Like, you don't need racism to either be gritty and deal with dark themes, which is what seems to attract a lot of people, nor have a thing be something that resonates with people or can be a piece of art that engages with what it is to be human. You don't have to engage with topics of racism. However, whilst Warhammer isn't inherently engaged with topics of overt, like, caste systems or race like that, it is a universe in which every single faction is quite xenophobic and hates each other. And the humans, for example, will murder and kill anything that doesn't really fit the imperial truth. It's all meant to be a super exaggeration of totalitarianism, of religious fanaticism, of fascism. But honestly, it's so at odds to anything we have in Magic where they are purposefully trying to, I don't want to use the word sanitize it because I'm not using that in a negative way. That is what Magic is doing a lot of the time with like avoiding racism as a topic because it isn't needed. And Warhammer doesn't dance around that. It kind of embraces it to an absolute extreme where everyone wants to murder each other just because they're acutely different. I guess what I'm trying to say with all this is that there is a shift in Magic the Gathering. We knew there was a shift in design philosophy. It's been fucking the game for a couple of years now. But there is a shift in the people making it. There was talk before of no guns, no racism, that sort of thing. And now we have guns and like totalitarian death to anyone who looks different to me coming in via this collab. What that really shouts to me is that these decisions to include Warhammer, for example, are not being made by necessarily the people at Wizards per se. It's a Hasbro decision, right? There was talk in the investor conference thing about how tabletop gaming has exploded. And it has. Warhammer is booming. Games Workshop are fucking loving life. I'm one of the people who has got deeply into it during lockdown. So Hasbro want every part of that pie they can get, right? They're a huge conglomerate. Is that even the right word for them? They're just a huge, monstrous, capitalistic monster, right? So not only do they want to expand D&D and their toy ranges and shit, but they also want to get in on some of that GW money, right? This is definitely a Hasbro decision, not a creative decision from those who are the creative leads of Magic. And I'm not saying that is inherently bad, but it does raise some flags, right? Magic is going to become more and more Hasbro corporate controlled. That's just obvious. They are folding Wizards of the Coast into Hasbro. Part of the presentation talked about that. They've talked about how, in the presentation, not just on Magic, but on just in general, how Hasbro Pulse is a focus for the future, where like 33% of their sales or some number, don't quote me on that, but it's something similar to that, was directly to customer avoiding all stores, and they want to increase that. Again, it might have been double, or they use a lot of the word double and tripling on everything. I think that's just the jargon that everyone uses, right? It sounds good to invest if you're doubling and tripling things. Doubling and tripling profits, right? Say it enough, that's what you think's happening. So they want to cut out the LGSs, sell directly to us, increase their collector market. That was another thing. Collectibles is a hot business right now. Secret lairs with unique stuff that your FOMO are going to miss out on. And the thing is, the Magic community didn't focus on any of this shit. We laughed about the dog shit new Wizards logo because it is quite literally the worst fucking thing. It's like Stars in Their Eyes meets young adult fucking mystery fiction on Netflix. It's awful. But no one's thinking about how LGSs are being cut out of the loop. And the funny thing is, with a partnership between Hasbro / Wizards with Games Workshop are starting to ramp up towards cutting out the local game store as well. There is news every couple of weeks of them fucking stores over with pre-order numbers or giving them the amount of product or just going straight to print to demand and not ever fulfilling the pre-orders that you did with stores. So all these companies are doing it because they've realized because of the global pandemic, they need to have a way to monetize everything which doesn't involve having brick and mortar stores open, which is damaging to the community as a whole. So my closing points, I guess, are that A, this isn't your papa's Magic anymore. It's changing drastically. Things they were saying mere years ago about thematic or flavorful concerns, guns and all that shit, they don't matter anymore. And Wizards has less and less control over its property now. It is being folded into Big Daddy Hasbro. And Big Daddy Hasbro wants the shareholders to hear the words double and triple every year. Is that terrible? Well, it's not great, but I think the crossover is perhaps the least of our worries. And I do have to say that I think some people are riding on this Vorthos train to give themselves something to moan about. Some people are generally concerned about losing the Vorthos element of Magic that they love, and I get that. But I think some people are just fucking moaning for the sake of it. And we need to perhaps criticize the things that matter. Have goals in mind. Like, what do we not want to happen? The game to be inaccessible to new players? So complain when these things become a secret lair like The Walking Dead. But Commander decks on the shelves of game stores? Wonderful, that's really good. But if it's Commander products with a limited release run that's only sold through Hasbro Pulse? Well, fuck. That would be awful. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. This has been quite a chilled talk to camera, a bit of a ramble, if you will. I just want to share some of my thoughts and my opinions. It's not all fucking roses. I'm not defending Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro completely here. I just do wonder if the community has got its eyes fucking set on something that doesn't matter so much. It's kind of similar to the controversies around people making Tron jokes over the weekend on Twitter. The Magic community were losing its mind, saying it's discrimination to mock Tron players. But all I say is, fuck Tron players. If you like the video, smash that bell, don't forget to hit that like button as well. Let me know in the comment section below what you think about this ongoing change, the shift of Wizards into an internal part of Hasbro, and what you think of the crossovers too. And be nice, okay? I haven't sat here and told you that your opinions are dog shit. I mean, if they disagree with mine, they probably are, but that's not what I've done, right? So let's talk about it civilly and think realistically about where Magic is going. Because if you're quitting Magic over this, then I feel sorry for you a little bit. Because Magic's actually, in spite of all its current problems, a fucking awesome game. Ta-ta for now.